everyone, and welcome to this episode of Sidestagewithsoph, the show that takes you behind the safety curtain, behind the scenes, showing you what it really takes to get a show up on its feet. From cuts to costume fittings, sits probe to star ratings, and tech to fine tuning, we will discuss it all here with your host, Soph. Today, our guest is someone who, at just 19 years old, is debuting her second play. Please welcome Cait Roddam to the pod. How are we?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Good, thank you. Yeah. Cait, we are here to talk about your play, The Fools That Are Left. It's
Yeah.
based on the night that the famous Villa Diodati Ghost Story Challenge and thus Frankenstein was born of Mary Shelley.
Mhm.
What was it about that conversation that sparked such an interest of you? Like, how did this play come about?
Yeah, I mean, really good question. So I started the sort of thought process for this when I was doing my A levels. So it actually been at the back of my mind for a long time, so about 3 years now. And we were studying Frankenstein, and my English teacher told us the story. Oh, Mary and Percy were together at this point, and Lord Byron had left London in disgrace, and he was holidaying with his personal doctor and his personal physician in Geneva, and he invited them personally to come over and holiday with him in the summer of 1816. And I just remember thinking, this is unbelievable. So sort of like three, four of the biggest literary names in history were at one point all in the same room together.
Yeah.
What? I didn't know that. And I was sort of almost embarrassed I didn't know that because I'd been a literary enthusiast my whole life. And it wasn't something I really even deemed was possible, having that many geniuses in the same room and them all being so young. And one of the first thoughts that crossed my mind was, how has no one written a play about this? Because I know a couple of movies have been made, which I have my own thoughts on in terms of accuracy and entertainment. Yeah, because I often struggle with both the sort of coming at it from an academic and a creative point of view. So that's where I struggle with the movie adaptations. But I was thinking, this is perfect for a play. This is
Mm,
perfect for the stage. This is something that audiences can get up close and personal with in ways that might not be possible by just sat at home on a screen. This is something that they can experience as a community. It took me 3 years to write it, to sit down and write it. I got my exams out the way. Um, did another play to sort of set myself up nicely as a sort of somewhat established fringe artist.
mm.
That was one woman. And then at this point, finally, early this year, I was like, I think this is a good time to get this on paper. And here we are.
Yeah, it does make sense because, like, I feel like most people are familiar with Mary Shelley herself and Frankenstein, so it's
Yes.
nice, and it's something I do like to do with this like podcast is highlight those things that went into it. Like you like to
Yes.
know what happened beforehand and stuff like that.
Mm.
You've worked at Shakespeare's Globe, wow,
Yes.
and the Camden Fringe, and you're now about
Mhm.
to bring your second play to a fringe theatre. In your experience, is there something kind of untouchable, I suppose, about being that close to an audience? Like, is there aspects that you find that you get in fringe theatre that you just can't get in bigger spaces?
100%, because it's so rooted in community. You just get locals from Camden who make it a passion project to go and see the art that is, being created in their own space, next to their own homes,
Mm,
on their doorstep. And they make an active effort every year to go and support that art and go and see it. And obviously, perhaps closer to home, I get to see friends and family members, and my actors do as well, that they haven't seen in ages, and it's a great excuse for people to come together in whatever context,
mm,
um, and just experience something together. It's another reason why I think theatre as a whole is so special. In some ways, it's the closest thing we have to magic, where for however long, those people are performing, you are completely immersed in a story, and the outside world doesn't seem to matter so much. Um, so it's that real sense of community and fringe. A lot of the time it's sort of a universal thing with fringe. You're never really in it for the money as well.
mm.
It's never, and that's not a dig, that's a good
No.
thing. You know,
It's yeah,
people do this out of the kindness of their hearts because they want to share something
yeah.
with a group of people. You know, they're inviting them into a story, and I think that sort of sense of community is made perhaps more intimate with those smaller stages, and with these kind of pub theatres where it just feels really organic and
Mm.
communal. And it takes the pressure off you as well. I think as a I think as a new writer, as an upcoming writer, and a young one as well, when you're
Mm.
perhaps feeling more inhibited, I can't recommend Fringe enough, because it will give you that confidence. And I think nowhere is an audience more on your side than during Fringe, because everyone's in it for you, and you as an artist are in it for them. So
Yeah.
that's great.
And you also never know where a fringe show is going to end up. It can end up on
Of
bigger stages, as
course.
we've seen, and new
Yeah,
writing is always welcome on our stages, let me tell you.
of course.
Um, one of the questions I was going to ask you just about touched on it there was do you find Mary Shelley inspirational because of you both being so young? She was quite young at the time when she wrote Frankenstein. Um, I was just going to ask, like, I found myself basing a lot of my questions around commending you for your age, like focusing on how astounded I am of your success for such a young age. Like, would you find
Thank
her a
you.
big inspiration? Yeah.
Oh, I think my personal connection with Mary Shelley runs deep. I have to immediately say that none of my answers will hopefully make it sound like I'm comparing myself to her. That's not at
Hmm.
all what's going on here. Her work is incomparable in so many ways. But there is that sense of acknowledgement of the fact that this was a young woman in her teens, surrounded by these big, apparently great men,
Mm.
who were already at this point in 1816 so established in their positions as poets, as romantic poets. And, she was the daughter of some very impressive philosophers, cultural philosophers. Um, Mary Wollstonecraft, William Godwin, who were sort of big celebrities in their own day. But
Mm.
at the same time, she's sort of an upstart in her own right as this sort of young teenager. And she wrote this absolute juggernaut of a classic that rips into human nature, like we'd never seen before as a society. I think it's why it freaked a lot of people out. Because another thing about her is that she just went and did it, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Hmm.
Because it's one thing for a female writer, particularly of the time, to have an idea and to put that idea onto paper and then into print.
Yeah.
It's a whole other thing to actually get it out there. And later, after her husband's death, release a second edition and say, it was me that wrote this. 'Cause I think with the first edition, it was published anonymously.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she was obviously more inhibited when she
Mm.
was, like in 1818 when it finally got published for the first time. And then by 1831, she's established and she's ready to acknowledge herself as the author. So I think that sort of growth in confidence
Yeah.
as a young woman writer, because I know I feel inhibited when sort of when I'm in a space with people who are more experienced than me, older than me. It's like how much of a voice do I have in this space? But you
Yeah.
do it yourself. Just get the work out there, and
I love that.
you will reap the rewards. Yeah. So I think that was the thing for me. Like she just did it. Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, if you think of it, just go for it. I mean,
Just
it's that
go for it.
cliche,
Yeah.
like you miss all the shots you don't take. If you failed,
Absolutely.
you failed, but you might get there.
Yeah.
Um, I was gonna say as well on that, like I am guilty of adding those five little words of for such a young age. Like,
Yeah. No, of course.
what are your thoughts on this? Like, do you find, as you said, when you're in spaces, do people look at your age more, or do they look at your experience? Like when you're in those kind of
Ooh.
conversations and rooms.
It depends. I've definitely had instances where people aren't previously aware of my age, and then
Right.
I tell them, and they go, "What?" And that can go one of both ways. It's why sometimes I'm quite hesitant in certain spaces to
Mm.
mention it. I sort of worry that I am I going to be taken as seriously once I say this. I definitely had it with the Camden Fringe, where it was a big risk. I was 17 when I produced and performed it, but 16 when I first, put
Yeah.
myself up for it. And I sent this really sort of like almost apologetic email, being like, just so you know, like, it's totally fine if it can't work out. Totally fine. I don't mind. I promise, I won't cry. I'm only 16. Can I still do it? And
Yeah.
they just said, yeah. This sort of went, this is new. But as long as you have a chaperone,
Yeah.
there's I don't see why you can't. And my dad was just but on the days before the show, just taking me into the theatre and making sure everything was
Yes.
all good. My mum and him sometimes took shifts doing that. But now that and I'm so grateful for that. They've always been endlessly supportive with me
Mm.
and my work. But I think now that I'm over 18 and I'm in a position where, I'm slightly more experienced and I've got a couple more things under my belt professionally, I feel somewhat less inhibited, but it depends on the person, because sometimes you get an older person, a more
Right.
experienced person who still very occasionally, will see an opportunity to try to talk down to you. Um, I think in that industry, it's going to happen anyway. You just need to learn as you go to sort of hold your own. I think particularly as I'm taking on like directorial positions, I need to really try to be finding my voice at this stage and say,
Yeah.
with this particular thing that I feel so strongly about, it doesn't mean I'm not inviting other opinions and other interpretations into the conversation. Of course, you have to do that as a director,
Yeah.
but sometimes what I say goes.
Mm. It does go
Stop,
back
just
to
stop being
that.
apologetic. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It does go back to that believing in yourself as well, because if you hadn't put yourself behind you at only 16, like we could what might be having this conversation for another 2 years, if you'd wait till you
Of
were that bit
course.
older.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Self-belief is definitely a big thing.
Yeah,
Um, you're clearly very taken by this story and the conversation, but what would
yeah.
you like your audience to take away from this?
Oh, that's a lovely question. I think more than anything, I want them to be almost pleasantly taken aback by the fact that underneath these names and these titles of Mary Shelley, the author of Frankenstein, Lord Byron, Percy Bysshe Shelley, they were young people.
Mm.
At the end of the day, they were young, confused, chronically intoxicated, um, angry young people who were quite anxious about the world that they lived in. They were
Yeah.
children of revolution,
Mm.
geopolitically. They were children of war. There's so much of those conversations that are actually in Frankenstein if you look hard enough. Um, and I think a lot of young creatives, feel the same. A lot of their sort of mindsets and their work are informed by, an increasingly confusing and anxiety-inducing world. Um, and perhaps they can look at this play, or, my interpretation of what might have happened that
Mm.
night, and think, at the end of the day, they're not so different.
Yes. Yes.
And they're not as big or intangible as we might initially think, if
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah. It's all about finding a relatability, isn't it? Like a parallel.
Of course,
Yeah,
yes.
absolutely. And like it was 200 years ago, but we can still find something to relate to now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
So we have reached the this or that section of the interview.
Perfect.
You can take as long or as short of time you need to answer them. Now, as I said before we start recording as well, is I am not the biggest reader, but I have gone off based my own memory and a lot of alliteration.
No worries. I love it.
So we have Dickens or Dickinson.
I love her so much for different reasons. Um, Dickinson. I have to be
Okay.
loyal. Have to be loyal to her. One of my first loves.
um, Twist or Twits.
Twist.
Okay. Um, Emily or Charlotte.
Emily.
Okay. Jane Austen or Enid Blyton.
Jane Austen.
And William Wordsworth or William Shakespeare.
Shakespeare.
Yeah, great. That is actually everything for today, Kate. I would like to thank you
Amazing.
so much for reaching out to me and joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, The Fools That Are Left runs at Etc. Theatre in London on Monday the 27th and
Mhm.
Tuesday the 28th of July, and I'll leave a ticket link in the description below. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you the next time on Side Stage with Soph. Bye!
Bye.